Welcome to Deep Dive. Today, we're diving into a significant proposed policy shift that could fundamentally reshape the experience for many international students, exchange visitors, and media representatives here in the United States. We're talking about the U.S. Department of Homeland Security's plans to overhaul how academic, exchange, and media visas are handled.
Right.
Moving away from a long-standing system to introduce much more rigid rules.
Pretty big change.
Yeah, it touches on everything from, pursuing higher education to professional reporting. We're here to help you understand what this all means for anyone navigating the U.S. immigration system.
Exactly. For nearly 50 years, certain visa holders have operated under a system known as duration of status.
Right, DS.
DS, yeah. This new proposal marks a dramatic departure from that, introducing fixed admission periods instead. And what's truly fascinating here isn't just the administrative change itself, but the profound ripple effects this could have across, well, various sectors. We'll explore the what, the why, and the crucial so what for you.
Okay, let's unpack this then. We've examined a lot of details and perspectives to guide our conversation, making sure you walk away well-informed about this evolving situation. So maybe let's start with the current system, understanding what duration of status actually means.
Good idea.
For decades, specifically F1 students and J1 exchange visitors, they've been allowed to stay in the U.S. as long as they complied with their visa requirements, right? And stayed enrolled in their programs.
Correct.
There wasn't a strict, calendar end date on their initial admission. That seems pretty flexible.
It absolutely was, and that flexibility was key. The core of DS means your legal status, your permission to be here, is tied directly to your program enrollment and, crucially, maintaining compliance with all the visa rules.
So as long as you're studying, following the rules.
Exactly. As long as you are actively pursuing your studies or your exchange program and followed all the rules, your visa status just continued. So if your program took a bit longer, or maybe you moved from, say, a bachelor's to a master's program, your duration of status could sort of naturally adapt without needing a formal separate application to the government for an extension. It was really about staying compliant with your studies, not hitting some arbitrary date on a calendar.
Okay, that makes sense. So with that understanding of the long-standing flexibility, let's turn to this pretty radical shift DHS is now proposing. Fixed admission periods.
That's the heart of it. The key takeaway here is a fundamental shift. We're moving from those open-ended stays tied to your program to a set cap on how long you can initially remain in the U.S.
A hard limit?
Hard limit, yeah. It introduces a much more defined timeline right from the moment you enter. It's a significant departure from that duration of statuses model we just talked about.
And these new limits, they're quite specific, aren't they?
They are.
For F1 students and J1 visitors, the initial admission period would be capped at 4 years.
4 years, that's the baseline for most.
And on top of that, the grace period for F1 students, that used to be 60 days after you finished your program, right?
Correct. 60 days to sort things out, travel, or prepare to leave.
That would be shortened to just 30 days.
Just 30, a much tighter window.
But it gets even stricter for some specific programs.
It does indeed. For those enrolled in English language training programs, the limit would be even tighter, capped at 24 months.
2 years.
2 years, and importantly, that includes any breaks and vacations. That's a key detail. It's not just program time.
Wow, okay. And high school students?
They'd face the most restrictive initial limit, just 12 months. Again, inclusive of any breaks or vacation time.
1 year total stay, essentially.
For that initial period, yes.
And it's not just academic visas being affected here. I-visa holders, the foreign media representatives, they're seeing big changes too.
Significant changes for them as well. They would be admitted for a fixed period of up to 240 days.
Okay, about 8 months.
Roughly. But what's truly notable here, and quite specific, is that Chinese nationals holding an I-visa would face an even stricter limit. Only 90 days?
90 days. That's a very specific carve-out.
It is. It points to perhaps other geopolitical considerations influencing these rules. But overall, this represents a fundamental redefinition of the stay in the U.S. for, well, potentially millions of international students and media professionals over time.
Yeah.
It moves away from that program-centric compliance model we knew to a far more rigid, time-bound structure for everyone involved. It could really alter how people plan their studies or assignments and their overall experience here.
Okay, so beyond these initial time limits, What happens if you need to stay longer? Let's say your PhD takes more than 4 years, or your exchange program gets extended.
Right, that's a crucial question.
This proposal also outlines significant procedural changes for how extensions would work, right?
It does, and this is another major point of departure from how things work now.
How so?
Well, currently, if you're an ECR J visa holder, your academic institution, your school or program sponsor, typically manages any necessary adjustments to your stay duration. They do this through updated documents like the I-20 form for students.
The certificate of eligibility?
Yeah, exactly. Your school issues an updated one if your program is extended legally. But under the proposed rule, F, J, and I visa holders would have to apply directly to U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services, USCIS.
Directly to the government agency.
Directly to USCIS for an extension if they want to stay beyond that initial fixed period.
And that's not just filling out a form, I assume.
Definitely not. It would require a formal application, likely fees, and significantly biometrics. That means a physical appointment for things like fingerprints and photographs.
Okay, so a much bigger hurdle.
A much more involved, time-consuming, and potentially costly process for the individuals themselves. Plus, you'd need extensive documentation to prove why you need the extension.
Wow. Okay, this shift impacts extensions, but you mentioned something earlier about unlawful presence. That sounds serious. How does this proposal redefine that?
It is serious, and this is a critical change. It significantly raises the stakes for anyone on these visas. Currently, under the DS system, unlawful presence generally only starts to accrue after there's been an explicit finding that you violated your status, like by an immigration judge or an officer formally determining you fell out of status.
So there's a process involved.
There's a process, and often a determination point. You might technically overstay your admitted period by a bit, maybe due to confusion or processing delays, without immediately accruing unlawful presence, as long as you reasonably believe you are still in status and hadn't been told otherwise.
Okay.
But under this new proposal, that buffer, that process, it's gone. The accrual of unlawful presence would begin immediately, the very day after your fixed admission period expires.
Instantly.
Instantly. There's no gray area, no waiting for an official decision.
That seems harsh.
It aligns these visa categories with how unlawful presence works for many other visa types, like tourist visas. But it's a huge shift for FJ and I holders. It's like a legal tripwire. Think about it for students. One missed deadline for an extension, maybe an administrative hiccup at USCIS processing the extension, could instantly flip their status from legitimate study to accruing serious legal barriers. Unlawful presence has major consequences for future visas, green cards, or even just re-entering the U.S. later.
So the consequences are immediate and potentially severe.
Stark and immediate. That risk, that urgency, it wasn't really there in the same way under DS. It fundamentally redefines the landscape for these visa holders.
Okay, understanding these pretty profound changes, the fixed terms, the direct USCIS applications, the immediate unlawful presence, the big question is, why? Why this dramatic overhaul after almost 50 years of the DS system? What's the government's perspective?
Well, DHS officials present several core arguments for making this change. They state it's necessary to, 1, tighten oversight and prevent potential visa misuse.
Okay.
2, to address what they've termed the perception of forever students. Individuals who might remain in the U.S. for very extended periods, seemingly indefinitely under the old DS system.
So tackling perceived loopholes.
That seems to be part of the rationale. A spokesperson commented that prior administrations, by allowing visa holders to remain indefinitely based on program duration, unintentionally might have posed safety risks or potentially burdened taxpayers and the immigration system.
So they're framing it as a security and efficiency measure.
Essentially, yes. They're aiming for more direct control, more predictability from their perspective, and increased accountability within the system.
Right. So the government sees this as a necessary tightening, a way to modernize and ensure security. But as you can imagine, this perspective isn't universally accepted.
Not at all.
Especially given, as you said, international students are already closely monitored by their schools who report back to the government through systems like CEPIS. So how does DHS justify the argument that this new system actually tightens oversight in a way the existing one couldn't?
That's precisely where the critics push back hard. There are significant concerns being raised, primarily that this policy, whatever its intent, may cause considerable uncertainty and ultimately deter prospective international students from choosing the U.S. in the first place.
Discouraging them from coming here.
Exactly. Miriam Feldblum, from the President's Alliance on Higher Education and Immigration, has strongly emphasized that point. International students are already under strict monitoring. They have regular reporting requirements to their institutions.
Right, the schools track them.
And those institutions report back to the government constantly. So, she argues, adding these new bureaucratic hurdles, the direct USCIS applications, the biometrics, the constant worry about the fixed date, could really undermine their confidence in studying in the U.S., making it seem less welcoming or stable compared to other options.
So the concern is that any perceived security gains might come at the cost of losing global talent. Is that the idea?
That's the core worry, yes. And Fana Paul of NAPSA, which is a leading association of international educators, echoed this. She warned that this rule could significantly harm American innovation, the economy, and our global competitiveness.
How so?
The worry is straightforward. If international students are deterred by complex regulations, by the fear of suddenly accruing unlawful presence, by the hassle and cost of extensions, they'll simply choose to study elsewhere, in Canada, the UK, Australia, Germany, countries that are actively recruiting them.
And this isn't just a theoretical worry, is it? Are there signs this is already happening?
Well, it's hard to draw a direct causal link just yet, but the timing is interesting. Information we've seen from a recent 2025 survey by the Institute of International Education already reported a decline in new international student applications.
A decline?
Yes. 35% of U.S. institutions reported seeing fewer applications this year. That's a noticeable jump from 17% the previous year who reported declines. So the trend isn't heading in a positive direction even before a rule like this might take effect.
It really sounds like there's a tangible fear about the U.S. losing its appeal as a top destination for global talent and education, especially when other countries are rolling out the welcome mat.
Absolutely. The global competition for top students, researchers, and innovators is fierce. Perceived difficulties, uncertainties, or a less welcoming environment in the visa process can play a major role in where the next generation chooses to go. It influences where innovation happens.
You know, this proposal, it does feel familiar somehow. Didn't we go through something similar a few years ago? This isn't the first time such a change has been floated, right?
You're right. It's not the first time. You have a good memory. A very similar rule was actually issued back in 2020 under the Trump administration.
Okay.
But it faced legal challenges and significant opposition, and it was later formally withdrawn by the Biden administration in 2021 before it can be fully implemented.
So this is essentially attempt number 2.
It looks like a reintroduction of those same core concepts, yes.
Yeah.
Fixed terms, direct USCIS extensions, immediate unlawful presence accrual.
What kind of scale are we talking about here? In terms of numbers, how many people could this actually affect if it goes through?
DHS itself estimates that around 2 million non-immigrants, that's the combined F, J, and I visa holders present in the U.S. at any given time, could be affected annually by this proposal in some way.
2 million people?
Yeah, it's a huge number. And in terms of the new workload, they project that over a decade, USCIS would need to process approximately 205,000 F visa extension requests,
Right?
another 203,000 J visa extension requests, and about 6,000 I visa extension requests.
That's over 400,000 new extension applications for USCIS to handle over 10 years, on top of their existing work.
Exactly. It's a substantial workload shift for the agency, requiring resources and potentially impacting processing times. And of course, it's a significant new procedural burden for hundreds of thousands of individuals.
Now, crucially, you've said this is a proposal. It's not law yet. It's not set in stone.
That is absolutely correct.
Yeah.
Very important for people to understand.
So there's still a chance for input.
Precisely. The rule is scheduled for official publication in the Federal Register on August 28th, 2025. Once it's published there,
Okay.
a 30-day public comment period will begin.
30 days, that's not very long.
No, it's a relatively short window for such a significant rule. But it does raise an important point. If you are an interested party, maybe you're a student, an exchange visitor, a university administrator, a media organization, an advocacy group.
Anyone affected.
Anyone potentially affected, yes.
Wow.
This 30-day period is a formal opportunity to provide feedback, to submit comments, and make your voice heard on the potential impacts, positive or negative, of this significant policy change.
So paying attention to that Federal Register publication on August 28th is key for anyone wanting to weigh in.
Definitely key.
Okay, so let's try to briefly summarize what we've covered today. It's a lot to take in.
It is.
The U.S. Department of Homeland Security is proposing a major overhaul for F, J, and I visas. They want to replace the long-standing duration of statuses system with fixed admission periods.
Right, typically capped at 4 years for most students, but with even stricter limits for English language learners and high school students, down to 2 years or even 1 year. and specific limits for media reps, especially those from China.
And this change means needing extensions requires applying directly to USCIS, including biometrics.
A much more cumbersome process than the current school-managed updates.
And maybe the biggest kicker, unlawful presence would start counting the day after the fixed period ends. Immediately. No grace period in terms of accrual like before.
A huge shift in consequences and risk.
DHS says this is needed for better oversight, security, and to prevent people staying indefinitely.
That's their argument, yes. Control and accountability.
But schools, advocates, they're raising serious alarms. They worry it will deter international talent, hurt U.S. innovation and competitiveness.
Especially since application numbers might already be showing some decline. They argue the current monitoring is strict enough.
So a real tension between perceived security needs and maintaining the U.S. as a top destination for global talent.
Indeed. That shift, moving away from visas tied to program length towards these fixed-time admissions, it represents a really dramatic policy change. The implications are complex, not just for the individuals trying to study or work here, but really for the U.S. as a whole.
Yeah.
It's a potent reminder that immigration policy isn't static. It's constantly evolving. And sometimes these seemingly bureaucratic tweaks, changing how a date is calculated or who processes a form, can have these massive, far-reaching effects on global education trends, on our economy, and on international cultural exchange.
It leaves you wondering how a move like this might ultimately shape the future, you know?
Yeah.
The future of international engagement and innovation right here in the U.S.
It's a question with potentially billions of dollars and generations of talent riding on the answer.
Thank you for joining us for this deep dive into such a critical and clearly complex subject.
Glad to be here.
We really hope this exploration has given you, our listener, a clearer understanding of these proposed visa changes and what their potential impact might be. All the best, and we will meet again with another important matter again.